Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, depending on where you may be in the world. It's so great to have you on the line. We're really excited to share more about the Ross School of Business and our, strength in the tech industry today. As you'll see, the numbers really indicate how strong we are in this area, and there's a reason for that. So hopefully, over the course of the next hour, you'll get a little bit of insight as to why and a number of the resources available. Throughout this webinar, I will be moderating. You're welcome to submit questions throughout. A couple of my colleagues from the admissions team are also on the line helping answer those. For those of you who don't recognize my voice or we haven't met during my travels this year, I'm Michael Lippert. I'm a Senior Associate Director of Admissions for the Ross team. And though I don't directly have any tech experience, when my wife, Julie, was an MBA, she recruited most heavily for tech and actually helped organize the West Coast Forum you'll hear about. So I have a close attachment to the industry and a healthy understanding of it. And I'm joined here today by my colleague from the Career Development Office as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dimitri Wones, and I'm the Associate Director of the Career Development Office here at Ross. I'm originally from Michigan. I spent 10 years in New York, did my undergrad in upstate New York, and then spent a number of years working as a product manager at tech startups in New York City. I did my MBA here at Ross, and for the last several years have been working as a career coach for MBAs that are interested in breaking into tech. So excited to be with you all today.
Awesome. Thanks, Dimitri. Just to sort of setting the stage, we realize for some people listening, you might have already applied to Ross earlier this week, and this is old hat, but for some of you, this might be the first time you've thought about the Ross School of Business and what we're all about. So I just wanted to spend a minute or two giving you a sense of a couple of key takeaways that we think make us quite a bit different than some of the other schools you might be looking at. The first of those is we very much are the action-based learning school. We believe strongly in this idea of learning by doing, and that you learn best that way by getting out in the field and solving real problems. So if you want as many opportunities to do that, we feel we offer the breadth and depth of those are stronger than any other school, and you'll hear some of those exactly how they pertain to the tech world in a bit. We're also ranked in the top 10 of 9 of 10 business specialties. There's only one other school in the country that can say that, and what that means is just the breadth and depth of thought leadership across the board here at Ross is particularly strong. You're not asked to overly specialize in one area, and I think as you think about the tech industry and working cross-functionally, that's exceptionally important. And a similar line of thought, we have over 100 top 10 ranked graduate programs at the University of Michigan. Again, only one other school in the world that can say that, and you're allowed to take up to 3 classes at some of those other schools, or as you'll hear today, some of our students are doing dual degrees at some of those schools. This is incredibly important in the tech world as you think about the different skill sets you might need, working cross-functionally with folks from the School of Engineering, or what that might look like, the School of Information. And so that's a real asset to supporting Ross students in the tech industry. And then finally, we are ranked number 1 in alumni effectiveness. We also happen to have the most alumni in the world. And I think about the tech industry as you're thinking about breaking into small startup companies, or maybe I've heard from lots of our students that maybe it was an engineer at a certain company that wasn't recruiting on campus, a Michigan engineer who helped get them in the door at that company. So that's exceptionally valuable to have that as a resource. And now we can dive back into specifically the tech landscape. So I'll kick it back to Dimitri to give us an overview of Career Development Office support, and then we'll talk about some of the academic resources as well as some of the student and club resources available. So Dimitri, what does tech at Ross look like?
So as Michael mentioned, Ross is incredibly strong with tech. You'll see that after consulting, tech is the top area that students go into here. 27% of graduates in the most recent class went into tech. And you'll see that when you think of tech companies, you don't necessarily think of Ann Arbor, Michigan, but you'll see that historically about 30% of our class has gone west. And even of those people that are going into tech, about 65% of those people are actually going west to pursue their careers. So Ross students that are going into tech go to some of the most valuable and sought-after companies in the world. The logos you'll see here on the right, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, those are some of the top recruiting companies here. They hire some of the largest numbers of Ross students. But we don't just send students to those companies. We send to a really deep and diverse set of companies. You'll see everything from startups to some of the oldest, most prestigious names in tech. And we send students in all different functions. So students go into roles in operations, corporate finance, product management, product marketing, and they're interacting with these companies while they're here, not just by going to visit, which a lot of students do, and the Career Development Office and a number of resources here help students do that, but we also bring a lot of those companies to campus. So just this year, we have several new tech companies that are visiting us here. We have Adobe, Salesforce, Zillow, Facebook, and many others visiting us here on campus. So to help drive those huge numbers of students going into tech, that 27% number, we have a whole host of career support that we provide. So we have staff coaches like myself who provide one-on-one coaching, workshops, collaborate with clubs. We also have peer coaches. I manage a team of peer coaches that specialize in tech. These are MBA 2s who have pursued internships in tech. We also have career clubs. So we have the tech club, we have the design and business club, the data analytics club. We have an incredible alumni network that Michael referenced, the University of Michigan alumni, the Ross School of Business alumni. And then we have an incredible industry relations team, folks that work very closely with companies to help bring them to campus and help coordinate our visits to those companies on the West Coast as well. So to dive deeper into the peer coaches, we have over 80 peer coaches that work with the Career Development Office. These are students, like I said, who have had internships at some of the most incredible companies, and then they work with the Career Development Office to provide both individual coaching, everything from help with cover letters, resumes, mock interviews, and then they also lead something called a FAC group, which is a group of 5 to 10 students that meet weekly throughout the first year, led by an MBA 2 through a curriculum to pursue recruiting for a particular industry or function. So we have a tech FAC group, we have a consulting FAC group, we have a corporate finance FAC group, and they help you get through that recruiting process.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dimitri. I guess before we move forward, just really quick, as you mentioned, there's a whole host of different sort of functions that students can recruit into. I feel like we're about to use a whole lot of jargon and a lot of job titles and roles. Can you maybe give just a very brief layout of the most common tech jobs that our students are looking at on campus?
Sure. So some of the most popular jobs that our MBAs look at in tech are product management, product marketing, and operations. Those, I'd say, would be the 3 biggest ones. So product managers looking at building new products and services, product marketers looking at customer needs, figuring out how to bring the products to market, and operations looking at everything from supply chain, if you look at a company like Amazon, or internal operations if you're looking at a place like Google.
Awesome. I think that'll be super helpful as we go forward. I appreciate it. So we have 3 great students here in the room with us today, all with some different backgrounds, all super interested in tech. So I want you to hear a little bit about their backgrounds, and then they'll share some of their experiences over the next few minutes. Elsie, you want to kick us off?
Sure thing. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Awesome. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Latricia Staten. I go by LC, and I'm a second-year MBA here at the Ross School of Business. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, so also at home as Dimitri is. Undergrad, I went to Boston University, where I studied advertising and business marketing. Before my MBA, I worked in the creative advertising and marketing industry, and most recently, I was a digital marketing manager at Verizon before coming to Ross. In terms of my MAP project, which is our multidisciplinary action project that we all have here at Ross, which is an awesome experience, I worked for a tech startup called CivDrone. It was actually drone technology used in construction surveying, land surveying. So I actually got the opportunity to go to Israel, not only to work on this MAP project, but to also see the tech ecosystem there, which was of great interest to me. Also, this summer, I worked at Microsoft in the product marketing function, specifically on the M365 business, which houses Office Suite and Windows 10, which are the largest revenue drivers for the company. So that was awesome. Additionally, I am a Zelle commercialization fellow. So I'm on that fund, one of our very big venture capital funds here at Ross. I'm happy to speak more about that. And finally, I have a few leadership positions which are not necessarily related to tech, but I'd be happy to speak about those as well. But very excited to talk to you guys about all the tech experiences that you can have here at Ross.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Elsie. And we do have follow-ups. We'll get back to all that exciting stuff in a minute. How about you, Gui?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Gui Ruggiero. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil. My undergrad university was University of São Paulo, so Polytechnic Institute there. So I'm an electrical engineer by trade. Never worked with engineering though. I've always worked with on the business side. So I started my career at Procter & Gamble at CPG. Worked there for 6 years. And on the bottom part, the last 4 years actually was in tech, but within CPG, so leading the e-commerce business there. That's where when I fell in love with tech and transitioned to three startups. The last startup I worked for before coming to Ross, it's Didi. It's a ride-hailing company, giant ride-hailing, pretty much the biggest competitor of Uber worldwide. They acquired 99 when I was working there, and I was proud owner and operations there. My MAP project and my internship was both in the same company, so it was in the 15 Seconds of Fame, which is in Santa Monica, Los Angeles. MAP project is a consulting project. We can talk a little bit more about that. But my internship was in product management also. So I'm not exactly transitioning careers here, but I'm obviously transitioning geography. So it's a lot changing and learning a lot here. I'm doing a dual degree with the School of Information. So that's a very exciting thing that I'm doing here. Started this year, so maybe A2, but first year Master of Science there. And I'm a member of Tech Club, Design Plus Business Club, and Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital Club. So everything that touches tech, I'm a member here at Ross, and I'm happy to talk about it.
Awesome, super helpful. And last but certainly not least, Olivia.
Hi, everybody. You might see some similarities between Gui and myself because we were actually on the same map. But before I get to that, I am also a second-year MBA student doing my first year at the School of Information in their user experience, user design track. Originally from the Chicago area, so hopping over here to Michigan, not too far away from the fam. I went to undergrad in Indiana University, so clearly I love the Midwest, and I majored in finance, went to Deloitte for about almost 4 years in their technology consulting practice. Loved it because it gave me a variety of different industries and different areas in tech to explore. Ultimately, though, I wanted to get closer to, more to the pure tech itself, so I wanted to come back to Ross because it's a great place for that. Wanted to do my MAP with a tech startup, so found myself with Gui at the 15 Seconds of Fame team over in Santa Monica. Not too bad to be going there in March when here it's snowing. They're really big, growing big in the big entertainment and sporting industry, so it was another area I never had experience, so it was really fun to be in the startup world. Interned at Google this summer in Cambridge, Massachusetts, so I finally broke away from the Midwest. I was doing a kind of a strategy ops project with their data analytics team to improve processes for how they build curriculum for ads-related trainings, which is their bread and butter over at Google. And then, I'm a dual degree at School of Information, loving my classes. I'm also a VP in Tech Club and a VP in Design Plus Business Club. I'll talk a little bit about this later, but we are having a huge tech week here in December, and I'm in charge of planning that.
Awesome. So as you can tell, our students are working on a ton of different things, and as I was thinking about how we go through, thinking about ways to break into tech and prepare yourself for the tech industry, I sort of broke it up into 3 buckets that I think are really important. One is academics and how you develop your skill set academically. The second would be sort of the extracurricular, co-curricular resources throughout the University of Michigan. And then, of course, there's actually recruiting. So we'll get into each of those, and we'll start with academics. Obviously, you're coming back to school. One of the biggest things for Ross is the Multidisciplinary Action Project, or MAP as we call it. In case you haven't heard about MAP, I know many of you have at this point, but very quick basics. It is a 7-week consulting project full-time. You do not have any other classes at that time. You have a faculty advisor the whole time, a communications coach, a librarian assigned to you. It is a deep dive, sort of as a second internship before your summer internship. We have over 85 projects to choose from across 32 countries. Half of the projects are international. If you're an international student listening, it's a great opportunity to work with maybe a tech company in the U.S. and understand some of that business culture. And the company sponsors pay all of the costs associated with the MAP project, which is a real benefit compared to some other similar action-based learning opportunities. As I think about MAP from my standpoint, I'll just point out a couple of things that I think if I was a student interested in tech would be really appealing. One is MAP is all about dealing with ambiguity. This whole idea of how do you scope a project quickly in 7 weeks, manage a client, come up with the right deliverable, and understand the problem statement in an intelligent way. And this is why tech recruiters love Ross students. The ability to deal with ambiguity is just higher, and there's more examples in the interview process and ability to do that. There's also this idea of working with people you either don't know or from different backgrounds. That is all about what your tech internship in summer will look like, and MAP purposely places you on a team of students from different backgrounds where you're working on different skill sets and tackling the consulting project in that way. So that's a unique opportunity as well. Couple other things I think about is just career switching. If you haven't done tech before, you've had maybe a passing opportunity in the field, this is essentially guaranteeing yourself a second internship in the space. And the other thing I think is really exciting, and Dimitri could probably speak more of this later, but a lot of tech companies, particularly the smaller ones, are maybe hiring off campus or maybe don't have the resources to be recruiting at 5 or 6 top 10 MBA programs and not sending folks on campus. But our MAP projects are essentially an advertisement to these great firms to say, our students are doing great things, hire Ross students, and seeing them firsthand. And it creates connections with those companies that other programs just don't have. Maybe there's a reason. Guy spent his summer at 15 Seconds of Fame, for example. So before we move on, do any of our students maybe want to touch a little bit of a deep dive on their MAP project and what their experience was like?
Yeah, hi, it's Olivia. So I'll talk a little about 15 Seconds of Fame, and obviously Guy can jump in as well, since he was there with me. But it was really exciting because we spent 7 weeks, but 2 of the weeks we were able to actually go to California, and it was the beginning of our project, which was really, I think, really beneficial because we could do a lot of discovery interviews with our startup sponsor. Basically, our whole premise was they have this great area of where there's like sporting events, there are different broadcast companies, and there's all the different partnerships they have with all these leagues, and they get rights to the broadcast, and then they use a facial recognition that if you go to that event, you can like find yourself on their app, and it's really exciting. So they wanted to grow that and build in a philanthropy piece. So Guy and I worked on kind of bringing together 2 different startup-esque companies into one umbrella. So a lot of go-to-market strategy, a lot of dealing with different partnerships and relationships in the philanthropic world and the sporting world. So I thought it was really beneficial because out of all the MAP projects, the startup's going to be probably the most ambiguous because they really had no idea where they wanted to go. So we had a lot of autonomy, which was exciting. And I was able to bring that to Google this summer because I think, again, autonomy and Google also go together. So I came in, they said, here's kind of what we want you to do, but do whatever you want. So I was able to kind of use that confidence I had built with my MAP of going in, not exactly knowing 100% all the pieces, but knowing that I built that skill set with my MAP and I brought that to Google this past summer.
Awesome. Elsie, how was Israel?
Israel
So
was Israel was an absolute dream. So the way my project worked is we spent a few days in Michigan. Our sponsors actually came to Troy, Michigan. We got to build rapport, build relationships, and go through some of our initial project with them. And then we got to go to Israel, and we were there for about 10 days, where we got to actually see the products in person. And as I mentioned a little bit before, we got to see the entire ecosystem of, what is referred to as Startup Nation. So not only were we working on our project, which was to figure out a market entry strategy for the U.S. For this drone technology for construction surveying, we also got to go there and also see, what other products were up and coming and how we could learn from that. So in addition, our sponsor was actually from Tel Aviv, which is where we were based. And he really felt responsible for us having a full experience. So we also got to, experience Tel Aviv in a more fun way as well. And as Michael had mentioned, this is a fully sponsored trip, your MAP project. So it just was an all-around amazing experience to be able to learn, add value in terms of our marketing backgrounds, or if you had learned from our marketing courses, you could apply that to this project, but also to be in a different country, to experience this whole different technology and really have a good time in the new country as well.
Okay, fantastic. Well, since we have so much to cover, we'll move on. But I will say in the follow-up email for all of you listening, I'll send out sort of a list of some of the tech-focused map projects from the past year, and you can look through the project description to get a better sense of all the different opportunities for map projects in the tech area. In the more traditional classroom, there's a whole lot you can do to work on your skill set to prepare yourself for tech. As I mentioned before, again, I think one of the highlights of Ross is that really strong across the board of many different disciplines in the business school. So there's classes here in entrepreneurship, in data analytics, in fintech, venture capital, all across the board. But then also the ability to take classes outside of Ross and really immerse yourself in some of the top graduate programs all across the university. One thing I want to point out on this slide really quick on the right side that we're really proud of is we have the data and analytics concentration here at Ross. It's one of our most popular concentrations. There's a slew of electives you can choose from that focus on enhancing your data and analytics skills. And you take about 3 or 4 of those classes and are awarded that concentration. So in the follow-up email, I can send out a list of all of those specific classes that qualify for the concentration. The next thing I want to mention, we're fortunate to have 2 students in the room who are doing dual degrees with the School of Information. It's one of the most popular and growing dual degrees for our Ross students interested in tech. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you guys about the skills you're gaining and the choice you made to pursue that dual degree and some of the resources across campus.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with that. So it's Guy here. I wanted to being an engineer, I had a little bit of the technical background, but I wanted to bring the business and the design to it. So that's where I think the School of Information sits here, at least here in the in the University of Michigan. We don't have a School of Information in Brazil, for example. So I think it's a good mashup between the engineering school and the design school, the pure design school, and so it sits exactly in the intersection. And when I come from the MBA, I bring it's kind of a Venn diagram with the 3 circles, and I'm trying to sit in the middle, right? So doing the tech, so there's coding classes, there's pure design classes, interaction design and human behavior, and then bringing also the MBA perspective. So that's where I want to be. That's how I want to position myself, and I think that dual degree helps me in a large way to be there and put myself out there for future employees and be a better candidate. So I love the value proposition of that. I applied when I got here, so during my first year, so I applied in January, so in the middle of my second semester here, and I was accepted during the summer, and I started this semester doing courses in both schools. So I keep coming back and forth of the 2 schools, which is great, two alumni networks, 2 student bodies, and 2 everything is doubled, and I'm enjoying it a lot. Yeah.
Olivia, you want to share anything from your experience?
I'll just add a little bit. So kind of like you, I had a little bit of experience before school at Deloitte, kind of getting a little bit of a preview of what the awesome opportunity is to work with tech, design, and business. So I wanted to come to Ross primarily to tackle more of that business acumen and that tech acumen. But then I found opportunities at the School of Information by talking to other MBA students while I was here. Just like Guy, I applied as a first-year MBA, but I applied the day it was due, May 1st. So maybe be like Guy and apply earlier. But I've loved it. I'm doing graphic design courses right now. I've never used Photoshop in my life, so it's a really great skill that I'm also bringing back to Ross with my student clubs and making some great marketing materials with it. So there's definitely a lot of synergy going on between the 2.
Awesome. That's super helpful. Before we move on, I was just wondering if any of the students want to talk about maybe any Ross classes that were a particular highlight. It doesn't have to be one of the ones on the slide, but just any class that really stood out as helpful in your internship or in this space.
I want to highlight a couple of them. So I took data mining. Very cool class, the professor, amazing professor. I never seen a person that enthusiastic when he downloaded gigabytes of data just to mess up with. So it was amazing to learn R and a little bit of how to actually machine learning works with huge sets of data. So that was great. I was enrolled in integrated product development, which is the first one that's on the left. There, I had to drop that course because of my dual degree, right? So to take courses there. But what that is it's a course with Rossers, engineering school students, and School of Information students. They build a group with all 3 schools, and you actually have to develop a product, a physical product. It can have an app or something like that, but it needs to have a physical component. It's a semester-long course, and by the end of the semester, you actually present your product in a fair. So it's an amazing experience. I was looking forward to doing it. Unfortunately, I had to drop and take school information classes. But yeah, it's a great one to learn how to build a product end to end.
Awesome. Yeah, I would say my marketing course was really, really helpful, especially because a lot of projects you have to deal with different users and think about their needs and behaviors. And so marketing traditionally has been really good at different ways to survey, different ways to interview, and discover what they really need and be able to not only develop a product, but make sure that they're aware of it, make sure it's meeting them at their point of need. So I think the marketing course was really great and helpful for me.
Yeah, that's an awesome example. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Elsie.
Hey, it's Elsie. Yeah, this is going to sound a little strange, but I really enjoyed our finance core class. I come from just doing marketing and strategy and, more of the creative side. So actually using those spreadsheets and learning how to model was actually really helpful for me in my internship. And then eventually I started taking data spreadsheet classes at Ross. So having that familiarity with Excel and models was actually really great. I actually enjoyed it and it was relevant for my internship. So that's another one I'd like to call out.
Awesome. I love those examples. It reminds me a lot of my wife's experience because she ended up actually backing away from tech recruiting and taking this modified sort of product marketing or a brand manager role for an automotive company, right? So tech covers all these areas, but I think she talks all the time about how she's using marketing classes and finance classes in her day-to-day work to succeed and be able to communicate with the product developers and have success. So those are great examples. This next slide, there's a lot going on here, and I want to walk you guys through it because in my mind, I think one of the biggest differentiators of Ross is how immersive the experience is and how much our students sort of push themselves outside the classroom in terms of skill development and leadership development, and there's a lot of opportunities for that. So the left side of the screen, thinking about workshops in the tech space, there's a number of opportunities. Right when you walk on campus, one of our entrepreneurs in residence who works for Disney, Microsoft, and Yahoo, is a vice president of product marketing for a couple of startups in Silicon Valley. She is here full-time as a resource if you're launching your own company, but she also does a product marketing workshop to help you understand what the landscape looks like. And your peers as students are also helping you develop your skills. So the Michigan Code Academy launched last year. So walking you through how to do Tableau and Python and SQL and things like that. And then we also have the data insight and analytics group. And that's sort of step 2 of data analytics, but doing consulting projects focused on the insights from data. So our students are working on consulting projects with the Detroit Police Department, Ford Motor Company, where they're actually getting to work with giant data sets and deliver insights to C-suite executives and then take those skills to their internships and full-time roles. So that's pretty unique. One thing I want to point out is Ross has a number of student-led funds. We have nearly $20 million managed by our students in the startup space. And Elsie, you've had a great experience with the Zell Lurie Commercialization Fund. I'd love for you to give us an overview of what that looks like.
Absolutely. So the Zell Lurie Commercialization Fund is the early stage fund that we have here at Ross. And I was particularly interested in going for that fund specifically because I knew that eventually I would want to explore entrepreneurship myself. So basically every week I get an opportunity to have entrepreneurs or founding teams come in and actually pitch to our fund to see if we can do some investing for them. So some of the things that go into that is a complete due diligence process. And through the due diligence, you do some market sizing, you look at financial modeling, you look at their team makeup, you look at all of these different elements that really help you understand what are the investment decisions that go behind actually giving money to entrepreneurs or startups. So for me, that was twofold. I was able to, apply some of the learnings that I learned from finance or marketing class, but then also pick up new skills in evaluating these companies. And I knew eventually that'd be relevant for me if I ever was in the position to be an entrepreneur, which I am now. Actually launched a restaurant and I'm doing so with the Zell Lurie institution here at Ross. I understand what that due diligence looks like from the other side. So for me, that fund has been invaluable for me and my learning. And I know it has for all of the other fellows, but as Michael mentioned, there are a ton of different funds. We're one of the only ones that is early stage. Others work on Series A and Series B funding opportunities, but it's just one of those action-based learning opportunities here at Ross that you can't really find anywhere else. And it's been an amazing experience.
Awesome. That's a great overview. There's obviously lots of clubs. We couldn't fit them all on the screen, but Guy mentioned you're involved with all this anything tech related on campus. Do you guys have any other? I know there's some good examples going on that aren't here.
Yeah, so I think a really great club that obviously if you're interested in tech, but even just business in general, is Design Plus Business. I'm in the board this year. I'm on the facilitation role, which means I get an opportunity with my directors to help different student clubs, to help different Ross entities, and even the community use some design thinking practices. So on the screen here, we see that empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. That is one of the great frameworks that we try to bring to different clubs. In fact, right now, I'm developing a workshop with our MBW, which is our Michigan Business Women. We have a really big leadership conference coming up next week, and we're also bringing the Center for Positive Organization. So we have a professor from there, and we're working to do a strength building workshop with these design thinking principles. So I really like the cross collaboration that you get with these clubs at Ross. You don't just join a club and sit in your club. You get to work with all these different areas, and that's a reflective of the real world, because often there's so many different industries, especially with tech, that are overlapping. Tech healthcare, tech finance, and I think it's great that it's reflected here at the school.
Speaking of clubs, I think another thing that really differentiates Ross is I'm sure if you're listening, you're hearing all the business schools you're looking at talk about culture and what does that mean and look like. But the culture at Ross is an incredibly supportive infrastructure of second-year students passing along their knowledge and being really supportive of you throughout the process. And I think having a professional club, in this case the Tech Club, is an incredible resource to help first-year MBAs hit the ground running in recruiting. And I know you guys are involved with the Tech Club. You just want to briefly touch on sort of the approach of what that looks like for the Tech Club?
Yeah, so one of the things the Tech Club does is weekly meetings with a lot of people trying to transition to tech. I mean, by transitioning, they're not from the tech industry. So there's a lot of lingo, there's a lot of concepts that it's nice to learn about coming to an interview or to talk with future employees, right? Employers. So there's a lot of these weekly meetings. There's a lot of what is an API? What is a product manager exactly does on a daily basis? So there's a lot of teaching going on there. Of course, you're not going to be an expert in APIs, but at least you know some of the stuff that you can search later and learn a little bit more in order to be better prepared for interviews or touch points with future employers. There's also, they bring a lot of people on campus to give talks and create events. So Olivia, I'm sure, can talk a little bit more about the Tech Week. So you can.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So, Dimitri, do you want to quickly touch on, we teed up this idea of fact groups and peer coaches. It's really unique to Ross, but this is sort of a snapshot of what the curriculum looks like. What are some of the benefits of this?
So the Tech Fact Group walks you through recruiting. A couple benefits from this. One, you are being led through this process by an MBA too who's gone through the exact same thing just the year before. So you get to see exactly how somebody did this the year before and breaking into an internship in the area that you're looking to do it. The second thing is you're with a group of peers who are trying to do the same thing you are, right? You're both looking at tech companies. You can share learnings. You can practice things like your resume, your Odyssey, which is kind of an introduction of yourself. Interview. You can do all of that on a weekly basis with people that are in a very similar situation to you. So not only is there curriculum, but you also get this great peer learning environment that helps you really accelerate the process.
Awesome. One of the other really important features of the Tech Club is West Coast Forum, or we have professional tracks. The Tech one is specifically called West Coast Forum. I remember my wife, before she was 2 weeks in the class, we didn't even know our way around town yet, and she was frantically planning this West Coast trip for mid-October, and I couldn't wrap my head around why was it so important. And now, a few years later, I see, look at the companies that she got to visit, and she came home from that trip and was like, I know which companies I want to go after. I met all of these alums. It was so important for her experience. Do any of you want to touch on your experience last year or getting to visit one of these companies up close?
I'll bring a perspective from not only from an international student, but also that someone that doesn't have a network on the West Coast. So it was great going there. and meeting people that live there or they're working there. So I was there for the West Coast Forum, which is one day, and then for the tech track, which is also organized by the Tech Club and the Career Development Office. I was there for the whole week, going to companies, going to offices, meeting alumni that are working in those companies. Most of the companies that we went to are there on the chart. So it was great. I mean, amazing. I've never been on the West Coast before, which is interesting from a personal side, but also meeting those people and having their emails to like touch base after that, and starting to develop my network in that area was like an utmost importance to me. That I want to leave there in the end, right? So that was my main goal, and it was amazing to be there.
Yeah. So I also went on the tech track that he went on. I went to it was the Bay Area. They also have one in Seattle, but I went to the Bay Area one, and I really enjoyed it because it was a variety of tech companies, right? We went to Google, we went to Tesla and did a whole warehouse tour, which was pretty sweet. We went to Salesforce, so I just like the variety that the tech tracks also offer, and you get to see all the different aspects of tech.
Awesome. Right, and I can't emphasize enough, I think that there's an importance to tech recruiting a little bit later. We'll talk about timeline, I think, in a minute, but being able to get out there in mid-October and really get a feel for the culture of companies, it helps you focus your time in recruiting, which I think is really valuable and such an asset that second-year students pass this down for first-year students. Last thing, we've teased this a few times. Olivia is busy. She was telling us all about what's going on later this year with Tech Week. Tell us more about it.
Yeah. So last year, I was on the committee for that was in Tech Club that put on our first ever Tech Day. It was a Friday at the beginning of December where we had different representatives from tech companies like Amazon and Wayfair, which is a digital furniture store, company out in Boston. And we basically understood that a lot of the timeline for people recruiting for tech at Ross, it really kicks up in January. So we wanted to have it in December so we could prep them for all this recruiting. So we had mock interviews. We had over 200 students participate. It was amazing. So this year we were like, why not, why start at just Tech Day? Let's do a whole week. So we are, yeah, I know, it's an undertaking. So we are doing a theme called Tech is Everywhere this year. Again, it will be early December. We're going to collaborate with different student clubs to show how tech is this great horizontal across different areas. So the consulting club's doing something with us. We're also doing something with a Women Who Launch club, maybe the marketing club, and we also are getting formal sponsors this year. So we have 5 sponsors across different areas of tech. We have Zillow, we have Qualtrics, Amazon, Deloitte, to show, again, the variety of tech that is there and just to get students really excited but also prepared for that January big milestone of recruiting.
Awesome. That's really exciting. I encourage those of you listening who maybe are on campus later this fall or winter interviewing or maybe at an admitted student event, talk to our tech students about how helpful that is in their experience during Tech Week because we're all really excited about it. So that leaves us about 15 minutes for questions. I'm going to maybe seed a couple of super frequently asked questions that I know come up most often, but we'll definitely look at the questions you're submitting as well. One I want to get out there is sort of the elephant in the room, where we are in the Midwest, and you think of tech, it's like, oh my gosh, I must be on the West Coast. How am I going to get there? One thing I'll put out there first is I was just looking at the numbers as we were preparing for this webinar, and a third of our tech jobs, which is a sizable portion given how many students in the class are going into tech, are actually not on the West Coast. There's so many opportunities all across the world, whether it be the East Coast, the Midwest, or international tech jobs that are out there. And so I don't want that to get lost because I think it's a little bit of a misnomer. I must be in the Bay Area or Seattle. But I'd love to hear your guys' perspective, having recruited. Olivia, you made it to Cambridge. Like, what does that look like, or how is it maybe an asset that Ross is maybe who we are in the landscape?
Yeah, so I loved being in Cambridge this summer. I'd never been to Boston, Cambridge before. It was fantastic that Google, its office there is right by MIT and Harvard. So I was fortunate to sublease from an MIT student. Whoop, whoop. And yeah, it was great to be out there because I got to experience East Coast life. Also, Google out there is really concentrated in the med tech healthcare space, which has always been a passion of mine. So I think that it was refreshing to be on the East Coast. Also, I tended to, since there aren't as many MBA interns out in the East Coast office for Google, I got a lot of face time. And I liked all that extra, opportunities for mentorship that I was able to get on the East Coast. Also, we start our day and end earlier than West Coast people, which is kind of nice for my personal preferences.
From my perspective, this campus distance is not a hurdle at all. It's tech anyway, so a lot of the bulk of the recruiting is done virtually. So a lot of interviews, it's calls and or hangouts or whatever the platform is. So that the technology bridges that gap, right? So it's not a hurdle at all. At least it was not for me. And usually on the last part of the recruiting process, they take you there anyway. So even if you're driving or flying, you're there. So I don't know. I didn't see that need to be there. I obviously took advantage of being there during MAP and then during the internship to create my and grow my network. But I didn't see it as a big hurdle.
Right.
Hey, yeah, this is LC. So I had spent 10 years on the East Coast for undergrad and for work, and I really wanted to get to the West. And I'd only lived on the East Coast and in the Midwest, so I was a little nervous. But when I got to Michigan, I realized we have an insane network on the West Coast, whether in the Bay or in the Seattle area. And as Guy mentioned, as part of the interview process, some companies will actually fly you out. And I wanted to take advantage of that opportunity to go to Seattle because I had never been to the Pacific Northwest ever until I was interviewing for Microsoft. And actually going there and seeing Seattle and also seeing how many Michigan people were there and willing to, help out with recruiting or show us around. It was actually amazing. And for this past summer, there were actually about 50 students that were in the Seattle area across different companies like Microsoft, Zillow, Amazon. So there really was no negative impact in terms of recruiting on the West Coast. It was very positive, and we're very well represented at all of the companies over there. So I was really blown away by that, and I just wanted to mention that if you're nervous about going to the Midwest, to Michigan, all the big companies come here, and you actually will be very well represented on the West.
Yeah, having worked in alumni relations, I could tell you just fun fact, there's over 10,000 Michigan alumni in the city of Seattle and over 25,000 in the Bay Area. Wow. Maize and Blue is incredibly well represented. And I'd also argue, I would just say, I think the relationships with companies is far more important than location. We are one of only 6 or 7 core schools from Microsoft in on-campus recruiting. We are one of the leading suppliers of talent to Amazon, and Google has an Ann Arbor office and it's just expanding in Detroit. So we are well represented with the big boys in the scene, even being here in Michigan. Quickly, you guys have kind of hinted at this a little bit, but I'd love to touch on the tech recruiting timeline to give people a little bit of a visual for next year. And also, I think it's a little bit unique, the timeline and how that might have affected your first year. I think it's helpful for people to understand.
Yeah, so the timeline here is a little bit, as you mentioned, different than, say, per the consulting timeline or the marketing timeline. Tech recruiting, you get to campus, you refresh your resume, but you don't have to hit the ground running as hard as other recruiting. You get a little bit more time to buffer that with, exploring what tech means to you, what kind of roles you like, and I love that because I didn't drop my first application, and it was Google, until mid-November. Some, I think, start to drop a little bit earlier, maybe October, but the majority of on-campus recruiting for tech, the interviews are in early January after winter break. So you'll start to drop a few more in November and December, and then you get to have that time to practice your tech casing and really feel more comfortable, I think, come January. So I had some on-campus interviews in January, and then I also did a little bit of off-campus in January and February, which I think we'll talk about in a little bit of off-campus recruiting for tech. Being a little bit different than on campus. But yeah, I think that the benefit is tech is a little bit more later in the year from when the majority of interviews happen. So you get to really get your resume in order to feel good about your interviews and get to explore your classes and your clubs a little bit more compared to other students.
Yeah, I love that. You have a little bit more time to adapt, right? Coming from a different culture, that's very important. But also if you're from the US, you readapt to school, right? You've been working some years and then you need to readapt to a different mindset. So having that extra time is great.
Yeah, and I'll just mention, from the off-campus perspective, off-campus recruiting is really what you make it. You could start very early, you could start later. I know peers that got really great internship opportunities off campus as late as April or May. Myself, I attended a few different conferences where companies I was interested in were represented very early in the summer as well as in September. So I actually was done with all of my recruiting by November. So it really can go either way. I'm happy to answer any questions about off campus, though.
That's awesome. One question, I'll make this a little bit modified from what you're seeing on the screen, or a two-parter, but a lot of people are looking at the MBA as a career switching opportunity, which makes sense. 90% of our class is career switchers. We think we're really good at it at Ross, and we, based on our curriculum and our resources. But I think it's a fair question to ask in this day and age, like, is an MBA really needed for tech? What does that look like? If somebody's still contemplating the ROI on an MBA, what would you guys say from having spent a year or two here and gone through it and spent the summer at these companies? What are you seeing, and what advice would you give?
I think it's a very, very interesting opportunity, a very interesting experience. As far as career switching goes, you have contact with a lot of MBA2s and a lot of resources to learn more about the industry, right? I'm learning a lot about transitioning geography, but I came with a little bit of experience in tech, so I was able, even as an MBA1, help even MBA2s to, like, hey, this is how the industry works. This is how my experience, like, maybe some things translate to maybe what you're looking for, or maybe people wanting to work for one of the companies I work for example, Didi. So I think you wouldn't have that experience, you wouldn't have that opportunity just looking for a job by yourself, right? So that the MBA, not only the coursework, also the alumni network, but also the all the MBA1s and MBA2s they will have in contact with to learn more about companies and the industry itself. That's what I would say, like, that's invaluable to the MBA.
Yeah, I would say another. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Elsie.
Oh, sorry. Hey, it's Elsie. What I would recommend in terms of advice for career switchers, because I was one myself, is to kind of look at where you want to go. Like, look at the job descriptions, look at the companies, look at the requirements that they're looking for, and take a look at how business school can help you fill those gaps. So for me, like I said, I wasn't really familiar with, modeling or visualization data tools and things like that. So I looked at Ross and I said, I want to pursue the data analytics concentration. I want to fill that gap in. I knew that some of the companies that I recruited for, like Microsoft and Google, et cetera, they would look for somebody with a more technical background. So what classes can I take that will help position me in that? Or, what clubs can I be a part of? I think the MBA really, really helps with that. Because, generally people who are coming are career switchers or looking to gain additional skill sets that they didn't have necessarily in their work. So that would be my advice, is to really look for where are those gaps and what sort of avenues you can take to sort of be a more attractive candidate while in your MBA program.
Yeah, and I'll end the question with, do you really need to get an MBA to go into tech? And I think that it depends on what you want to do with tech. So for myself, I'm constantly wanting to be in the middle where I think decisions happen. Like, you get inputs from your data team, you get inputs from your marketing team. And having an MBA really sets you up well to be there, because you understand the business decisions that need to be made, but you also understand, especially if you do the tech route, some of what Guy talked about earlier. Like, I understand what an API is. I understand at a decent level how some of this technology works, and I can bring that with my business knowledge and be able to make decisions. So I think, again, it depends on what you want to do with tech, but I'm someone that at Google, I came up with, revamping how this whole team of 150 people creates content with some of my processes that I put in place, and it was super exciting. And I think if I were super specialized in just one area of tech, say coding, I may not have that business view to make those decisions that I was able to make. So I think there's definitely a huge benefit to getting your MBA if you want to go into tech.
I think that's excellent advice. Obviously, a more extended conversation for another time, but I think that's a really good starting point. Some of the things you think about as you make a criteria for a decision. Last question. We have time for one more. It's another little bit of an elephant in the room sometimes, but Guy, you're an international student. The geopolitical climate is complicated. Visa requirements are on people's minds. International students are, trying to figure out, can I get a tech job in the U.S.? What does this look like? You're doing great here. It's worth it so far. I'd love to hear just a little bit of, how Ross helps international students, and then secondly, like, just your advice as an international student, some of the things you've done that you think have helped.
Yeah, sure. Yes, you can get a job here. A lot of people do, right? I mean, most of the students, not all. What I can say, so part of your question, the resources. So of course, a career development office, even admissions people. We have a amazing international center here at the university, not only at Ross. So there are a lot of resources that help you navigate everything that you need to, beginning with the getting a driving license. That's something as simple as that, but also like the I-20, all the documentation you need to work here. So I've never felt myself lost with all the processes because we have the resources to help. As far as the climate or the how politics is involved in that, I usually take the following approach. I need to worry about with what I can control, right? So I work as hard as I can to prepare myself to be able to stand out in whatever I'm doing, and then if I'm in front of a recruiter, I'll try to do my best and try to show them, hey, I can be a valuable resource here in our country, right? If I cannot worry about, I have no influence on what the president or whatever person is doing, right?
Yeah.
So I'll really focus on what I need to do, like working hard, studying a lot, and reaching out to a lot of alumni to be put myself out there and try to make it the best as I can. So to whoever is coming here, great environment, great opportunities come out of here. I've never felt I always feel myself with people behind having my back, and I'll do my best. People that come here are all very talented people, so just work hard and go for it because it's very possible to do it.
Yeah, that's such a healthy attitude and a positive note to wrap up on. I couldn't agree more, and I think it's also good advice for our admissions process. Control the controllables. So as you're thinking about putting your MBA application together, think about the right people to talk to. Use that time wisely. Don't worry about some of the sillier parts of the admissions process. We're really excited to read your applications, for you to learn more about Ross. We'll keep the conversation going. A lot of the folks you heard from today or some of the things you've heard about will be available on interview days and throughout the year to learn more. But this was a great conversation. We hope you got a lot out of it, and we'll talk to you soon. We'll send out a number of follow-up resources on some of the things we talked about. Have a great day, and go Blue.
Go Blue.
Go Blue.